At this point, I'd like to refer to the California Garden Bible, as we like to call it, the New Sunset Western Garden Book, and what they say about one of my favorite plants. They call it a classic cool season annual that provides sure, easy color from late fall through spring in mild winter areas. And that could be USDA zones 8, 9, and 10, as well as being a plant that from spring through fall in colder climates, it puts on its show. It has very familiar daisy-like orange or yellow double blooms, and they're big flowers too, 2.5 to 4.5 inches across. What are they? It's calendulas, and they come in other subtle shades besides the familiar orange and yellow. There's apricot, there's cream, there's a softer yellow. Sometimes it has contrasting tips, or on the reverse side of the petals, there's a color difference. It's a beautiful flower. It lasts a long time, and sometimes, if it's in the right conditions, it will get through either your hot summer or your cold winter and come back again the following year. Or is that because it's a self-sowing annual? Well, that's another interesting point about calendulas. Hey, did you know it's the year of the calendula? It is, according to the National Garden Bureau. Let's talk with their executive director, Diane Blazek. Diane, calendulas are a very popular flower, no matter who you talk to, because of their showy color. And I was in a nursery recently, and nurseries now have this interesting habit of potting up the plants that haven't sold over the last few months into bigger pots. And because in the case of calendulas or marigolds, they're in bloom now, and they're selling them on the same table. Now, in some climates, that can be a problem. If you've got marigolds and calendulas on the same table and you're selling them at a premium price, people might be rather disappointed. In the case of marigolds bought in October or November, they might croak by the time it gets too cold. And the reverse is true as well for people in colder climates, that they may find that calendula is not going to make it through the summer. But sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. Calendula. Let's talk about that. And we should point out, too, Diane, that it has names that refer to marigolds. Other names refer to the calendula as pot marigold. What exactly is a pot marigold, which sounds intriguing to certain growers in the Northwest?
Right. And yeah, maybe we won't go there. But yeah, there's a lot of flowers and plants that common names and then the scientific names. So we try to, our year of is the calendula, even though people call it by other things. In fact, did you know they even call it the poor man's saffron?
I did not know that.
You can use that yellow dye.
Oh, instead of saffron.
Exactly. Yeah. Cheaper alternative.
Too, in doing some research about its confusion with the marigold, some other early names for it include Mary's gold, which refers to the use of the flowers in early Christian events. And truly, the calendula has quite the history. It goes back to Egyptian times.
Yeah, Egyptian times, and it's native to the Mediterranean region, of course, so that would include Egypt. But yeah, somebody brought it over to North America, and it's become a very beloved annual plant, I guess probably for its bright colors.
And it is its own genus, which is appropriately enough calendula, and it's not in the same genus as marigolds, which is tagetes.
Right.
Or tagetes, if you prefer.
Yeah, there you go. And do you know where that comes from? The Latin word calendae, meaning that it blooms throughout the year.
I found one in my yard that made it through the summer, which here in California is very unusual, but it was in kind of a shady location, and calendulas prefer full sun. And as I was watching it bloom in June and July, I go, well, you go, girl. You just keep doing what you're doing. We'll see what happens. But I'm wondering if it was the same plant, or perhaps it had basically dropped its seed and that seed had grown and bloomed.
That's very possible. You never know what these plants are going to do in your garden, right? It's always an experiment.
Oh, the calendula is a self-sower, isn't it?
Yes.
One of its uses back in the old days, and it was even regarded as more for this than it would be for its beauty, and that was for its medicinal purposes or culinary purposes.
Right. And I see a lot of people still using it for different things. it's hard to make any claims on medicinal purposes, so we veer away from that. But there certainly are some different ways to use it in, beauty products or something like that. So there's a lot of resources out there that maybe you could research. I know we did a blog on using calendula leaves for a tea to make hot tea. So that's one idea, but there's a lot of them that you could find.
Online, if you go online, of course, online you can find anything, but there is a contingent of people who believe that calendulas can keep pests at bay because of its sticky stem or leaves.
Well, again, it's one of those things. It's a scientific experiment. If you plant it and you feel like it works for you, then go ahead and use it.
Good answer. I like that. And the other one, too, is it's allegedly deer resistant, with emphasis on the word allegedly.
Allegedly. Well, it all depends on how hungry your deer are. If your deer are hungry, they probably will eat about anything.
One thing that isn't in dispute, though, is that because it is in the aster family, it's a composite or an Asteraceae, it has wide, flat flowers, which are perfect for attracting pollinators and beneficial insects.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be one of the great reasons that I think to plant calendula. I mean, they're gorgeous, but if they're going to bring pollinators and beneficial insects, then it's a total win-win.
Okay, let's talk about how to grow calendulas now for people in the milder zones, especially zones 9 and 10 here in late October, early November. Is it too late to direct sow, or should you be starting them indoors first?
I would say you said zones 9 and 10. I think you can direct sow them about now. They say early autumn. So in colder climates, I would say you would want to start them indoors and transplant them. But it depends how eager you are. You could always direct sow them too. If you're in a colder climate, then wait until after your last frost.
Right. So for those who jazz about listening to this and order some calendula seeds online, they could start them over the winter and then plant them outdoors after like you said, after the last frost, because in colder climates, what would that be, like zones, 4 through 7, 4 through 8? They'll give you a consistent bloom most of the summer.
Yes, exactly.
Whereas here in the warmer zones, they're a cool season plant and put on their best show this time of year, which is perfect if you're looking for a bright light, if you will, on cold, cloudy, foggy days.
Oh, you're so right. Because yellow, what's brighter than yellow? And then a lot of the orangey or apricot ones, even the creamy ones you were talking about, would be perfect for some sort of fall arrangement, fall decor. It would make a beautiful one, a nice bright fall arrangement.
And as far as planting them goes, this is a tip I've discussed many times on the show about attracting pollinators and beneficial insects. They're like cars on the freeway and the drivers who are attracted to the big neon signs that are over the freeway. And if you plant any sort of showy flower in bulk, in maybe a 3-foot by 3-foot area, you're going to attract more pollinators and beneficials. And the calendula is perfect for that. What is the spacing between plants when you plant calendulas?
Well, the calendulas do come in various sizes. They're similar. So I would say, always make sure you read your seed packet or whatever. Here's one of the things, and this is why I find it a difficult question. I like to plant my plants a little bit closer together than what the packet or the label recommends. I like more of a show. You were just talking about a show that would attract drive-bys or flybys.
Yes.
If you're talking about yeah. And so, if it says plant them 12 inches and it's a 12-inch plant, well, that's probably pretty good. If you really want to pack them in there, that's okay. It's going to prevent weeds, but also know that sometimes, I don't think calendula are as prone to this, but sometimes you may be inviting some disease in if you plant them too close. So again, it depends on your climate. If you've got a dry, non-humid climate, you probably don't have to worry about this disease and you can pack them in there. So, gosh, how many times am I going to say this? It's an experiment, and you try something one year and then try it the next year. But my rule is follow the package directions, but maybe cut it in by an inch or two if you want more of a intense display, but just don't overdo it.
That is the importance of keeping a garden diary, and don't rely on your memory. By writing it down about how your plants, not only what you planted, which is very important, but also how they perform throughout the year and when you finally had to remove them and why you had to remove them, can go a long way to helping you choose the varieties that are best for your area.
I think that's the best advice ever, is a garden journal, because you're right. I can't even remember what I planted last spring, much less 5 years ago.
I can't remember what I planted last week.
That too.
Now I have to look it up. I'm not sure what I planted last week. Oh, let me see here. Because I always keep my garden journal next to me whenever I work. I'm flipping through the pages now. I have one garden journal. It's sort of like a scrapbook. It goes back to 1990. And
well, that's amazing. You could write a book on your journal.
Well, basically, yeah. But it got to the point where it was so crowded you can hardly read it anymore. All right, what did I plant last week? Oh, garlic. That's right. Garlic and snow peas. And I also planted seeds of parsley and beets and lettuce and carrots. That was a busy week.
That was a busy week. You're going to be eating well soon.
Well, one can hope. But, one thing about planting calendulas from seed, if you're starting them indoors, aren't they a little bit temperamental, like pepper seeds, that they really need some bottom heat of like 70 degrees until they germinate in about 10 to 14 days?
Yeah, that is a very good tip. And again, that's kind of me, like, well, more often than not, a seed needs some heat. So yes, I'm going to put it on a heat mat. But yeah, that's definitely true. Always provide light so your seedlings don't stretch.
Yep, good points. And you know what's fun too about calendulas, because they are a big seed, they're easy to plant with if you've got children or grandchildren.
Oh, yeah, that's very true. And then the other thing about seeds, and this is something I always try to bring up and I try to research, is knowing which seeds need light to germinate and which seeds need to be covered, with maybe a 1/4-inch soil or whatever, starting medium, whatever you're using. And calendula do need to be covered to germinate.
Yeah, they're a little bit of a bigger seed, so you'd plant them, just follow the label directions on the seed packet if you're doing it from seed, and it'll probably say about an inch or so.
For spacing?
Well,
I'm not sure.
For depth of planting.
Oh, for depth of planting. An inch might be a little deep. I'm thinking 1/4 to 1/2.
Okay.
So just cover them, yeah.
All right. And as far as their pH range, pretty normal. I think it's from slightly acidic to fairly neutral, like 5.5 to 7.
Yes. And one of our tips that I think is very helpful is pinching back the young plants. So you're putting them out in the garden and you're like, okay, they look a little leggy. They don't have a lot of branching. You may want to pinch them back and then they'll branch out and they'll give you more flowers.
Well, one way to encourage you to pinch back the young plants is to have a lot of small little vases indoors where you can bring them in as cut flowers, because they're pretty good as cut flowers, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. They'll be beautiful, right?
They don't have long stems, though, so perhaps those smaller vases would be best.
Right, like those little individual bud vases. Maybe if you want to have a little tea party or something, then you can have an individual bud vase at everybody's place setting.
Yes, I'm still enjoying that in my little vases here in the office. I've got the Zowie Yellow Flame Zinnia still shining brightly, even though it is fall.
It is fall, but that's an old AAS sweater, so that's interesting.
You've been listening to the short version of our conversation with the National Garden Bureau's Diane Blazek about the amazing world of calendulas. If you subscribe to the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter and podcast, you'll be able to hear the entire podcast, which is nearly twice as long as what you've just been listening to. Among the topics that we discuss in Part 2, why have there been no calendulas in All-America Selections winners? AAS competition has been around for over 90 years, yet there's never been a calendula winner. Why is that? Even though they've won many international competitions. What are the popular calendula varieties here in California? What are the popular calendulas in the Midwest? And we talk about an amazing scientific process that calendulas undergo every day. It's called nyctinisty. It's rather amazing, and we will explain that to you in the newsletter and the podcast that's available for paid subscribers. And if you are a paid subscriber to the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter, you also get access to the complete library of newsletter editions, which now number more than 200. Plus, it lets me know that I'm not wasting my time here. I'm doing something worthwhile that you find of value, even if perhaps it's only occasionally. Still, if it's something that you can incorporate into your own garden, making you a better gardener, hooray, that's a win for all of us. The Beyond the Garden Basics podcast comes out twice a week on Mondays and Fridays. So thank you for becoming a paid subscriber. Just click on the subscribe link in the newsletter to keep the good research-based gardening information coming your way. And you'll get the rest of this podcast as well as the complete newsletter, including the transcription. Thanks again for listening and reading. Just click on the subscribe link in the newsletter.